Disclaimer: the information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GANs processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Well, that was very special.
And let's all welcome Alex Skorik with a big round of applause from our souls in so many ways, and to give to Alex because he's given so much to us. Thank you, Alex. If you're ready, please.
Thank you so much. I want to welcome everybody to this beautiful Sunday afternoon. And I thank you very much, Mark, for leading the charge here. Such a busy week. We probably had decades of history transpire in just a few weeks. And it's a very exciting time to be alive. So let's see what else we can contribute. So please enjoy the session. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute teachings on plasma science. We're discussing advanced transmutation. The subject today is color density. My name is Alexander. I'm from Canada. It is December the 15th, 2024. So please enjoy the session. We're dealing in advanced transmutation topic. And all that is a continuation of many advanced teachings, but please understand it's still very basic public teaching. It's a little bit more involved. What we're trying to do is to add to the knowledge of the mature students and still keep an open door for the new students that are coming on. We all need our own way to describe things. And thank you for allowing me to continue to do this. Last week, we really went hard at it to introduce the world of color. And the week before, we were talking about gyroscopes. And the reason for that is because field rotation is very, very important. And one of the things that the gyroscopes, of course, did was it reduced the density of the field. And you say, well, wait a second, how did we reduce the density? Well, if you remember, the wheels were very heavy and they got lighter. And so the heaviness comes from gravitational. And so when we look at the color and we talk about the color wheel, we try to figure out how does this work? And does color perhaps have density? And when we look at our density, we are in the hesitancy highway. And so in terms of our physicality, we are in the most dense state. It is also the lowest energy state. Well, when we say the lowest energy state, what we're talking about is the lowest plasma energy state. But when we talk about density, then we're talking about the gravitational field forces. And, you know, there's nothing more gravitational than sweeping things under the carpet. That's as low as you can get. And of course, there's a sequencing, so we don't want to put the cart before the horse. So we had a lot of apples, and of course the horses ate the apples. And so we had to go from cartwheels to color wheels. And we wonder, is it skill or is it luck? And why are we discussing that? Because we're still searching for outer space. And so the fundamental thing about gravity is gravity seeks density. So we're seeking gravitational density to the plasma highway, to our little pie in the sky. And in many ways, we've achieved that. We've got that little piece of pie in the sky, and that's all we got. And when we look at the rest of the universe, we wonder, well, wait a second. Why are we just so happy with that little piece of pie? When we look at the pie chart and we wonder, well, can't we have the rest of the pie? And so we find that there's a factor with the speed of light. It limits transmission. But the speed of light has variable transition, and we know that because we have many colors. And then the question becomes is, well, what color is our soul? And are we disconnected from the soul? And then when we look at the rest of the universe and we say, how far is that? And we measure it in light years. Isn't that interesting? So, as I said, we'd like to have another piece, but maybe what we need to do is have another pie. And so when we talk about prejudice, we look at the Earth space and its range details. And so we have a periodic table of elements, but these are not all the elements that are in the universe. So these are just the prejudicial elements related to Earth space. And then, of course, there's the fundamental four: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen. And they form a tetrahedron, which we call a star formation. And from there, we do a lot of putting things together. But when we bring things together, we usually have a delivery system. And when we look at the energy coming from the sun, we can't see the delivery system. It comes by light. And when we look at what's in between the planets and between the sun and the earth and the other solar systems, we can't see that delivery system. And yet we make references on the zodiac, and these things have to do with a round pie. And we cut up this pie into 12 pieces, and each piece is 30 degrees. So that's how we have 360 degrees in a circle. And each of these members of the zodiac are kind of referenced to a color. And so that's what we're talking about. And one of the references that we have is targeting. And we want to capture that target. And what we use on this planet is called eyesight. And if we don't have eyesight, then we have to use mind sight, which means that eyesight and mind sight are two of the same. But since we use our eyes to look through the sights of the rifle, we're always given the advice, do not shoot until you see the whites of the eyes. And so interestingly, the whites surround the iris. And the iris comes in colors. And so we say that the white has every color, but it's white as a uniform color. And so when those colors differentiate and become individual, then they seem to cross over in the iris. And there's a study called iridology, which examines the color of the iris. And some people who understand this can determine the quality of your health. But when we pass the iris, we get into the pupils. And the pupils are the only black spot on our body. So we see the range from whiteness to blackness. And so if we say the white is every color and the black is no color. And why is the black no color? It isn't that it doesn't have a color. It's that the color that is being delivered is actually being delivered in. And when we look at the eyes, we're out. And so what do we see? We see the whiteness. So what we see is every color. And what we don't see is every color. So overall, what we're talking about with the various colors is this comes within the captured field. And so that's what we're doing with our eyes. We see the white eye with the colored iris and the black pupil, and that's part of the captured field. And all the colors, regardless of the color, are in there. And some of us have difficulty seeing those colors, but nevertheless, we see a difference. So what we wanted to do was to cause a little diffraction, and this is what happens when light goes through a crystal. And it's kind of interesting because these remind me of pool cues. You forgive me if I digress a little bit, because we're going to bring some billiard balls in, because what's really nice about the billiard balls is that they come in colors. And there's a variety of colors. And they range from black to white. And of course, they're operating in that sea of green. Remember that sea of green that we had the yellow submarine in the sea of green? And so there's a game that is played on this sea of green. It's called snooker. And the colored balls, which of all the colors are colored, but we refer to the colored balls as the balls that have only one ball per color. And the balls that have common color, well, we call them the red balls. And so let's rack them up, get out the pool cue, and the white ball is the cue ball. So the white ball is the shooter. And of course, the black ball is what decides the game, because whoever sinks the last ball will win the game. And so this is a game of snooker, very popular game around the world. And I often wonder, where does the word snooker come from? And it's a derogatory term that they call a real snooker. And it comes from a comment that Chamberlain made about a player who missed a shot. He called him a real snooker, referring to his lack of experience. Snooker being a slang, a term for a first-year cadet in the military. And the first official set of rules for snooker were drafted in 1882 at, are you ready? Uttakamund in Madras province. Let's just digress a little bit more. And as you can see, there is even a rainbow in Madras province. Looks kind of like our rainbows. And Uttakamund is commonly known as Udi for short. And the proper name is Udhaga Mandalam. And I don't know if I put the right emphasis on the right syllable. But this is a resort town in the western Ghats Mountains in southern India's Tamil Nadu state. Founded as a British Raj summer resort, and it retains a working steam railway line. Just thought I'd throw that in for interest. And other reminders of its colonial past include Stonehouse, a 19th century residence, and the circa 1829 St. Stephen's Church. And there's a 55-acre government botanical garden lies on the slopes of the Doda Beta Peak. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little side trip. Back to the plasma science. We're talking about Marin Tavakolikesh's books. Number one, The Universal Order of Creation of Matter. And one of the things that we look at, the matter state, and we see that it comes in colors. The dark matter, of course, is very dark, and the antimatter, well, it kind of looks goldish. And then we look at the structure of light. And is there a structure of light? And this is why we brought up the subject of density of color, because light comes in colors, doesn't it? But also it travels between places. And so when we look at the cover of the book, it comes from one place, goes to another place. And the way it does that is encapsulated in the structure of the light. And then, of course, there's book number 3, which we always thought should be book number 1, which is The Origin of the Universe. But interestingly enough, The Origin of the Universe splits up into 2 universes. And of course, we get the small pie. Everybody else gets the big pie. And then out of that small pie, we only get a piece. And at that, a very small piece. So we've been trying for 356 weeks with Rick Crammond and the Universal Council members to bring forward the concept of one planet, one nation, one race for justice and world peace. Because let's face it, if you were a universal traveler, you wouldn't say that you're from Madras. You wouldn't say that you're from North America. I think you would say that you're from Earth. And that's an important point. And so when we come to Earth, there were rules. And these rules were waiting for us, and we only had 10. Again, shortchanged. And now we find out there's 24. But who wrote these rules? We know who wrote the snooker rules. And maybe these are an extension of the snooker rules. So we're trying to get on the plasma highway. That's our goal. But where we are is on the transmission highway. We still are. And we see there's a frequency. And of course, we try to elevate ourselves to the transition highway because that is the next step. And not just for us, but for a lot of people. And so if we can get to the transmutation highway, that's certainly going to broaden our scope, isn't it? And that's where we're going to go. So one of the things that we have to do with respect to our knowledge is we have to have a strong foundation. And a foundation has to have cornerstones. And one of the things that's a really good question is, where is the corner of the sphere? And so we look at the universe, and then we look at our solar system, and then we see the color wheel. And our understanding gets smaller and smaller. And the reason for it is because the knowledge we need to know gets larger and larger. So we have to make relationship choices. So we found that in the transmission highway, we have three dimensions, so we need the three dimensions because it's a sphere. And then if we want to elevate to the transmutation, we have to go through a transmission dimension, and it has three dimensions because it is a sphere. And then when we get to the transmutation, we have to understand the rules are the same. And so it has to have three dimensions because it too is a sphere. And so if we just discuss the transmission and the transmutation dimension, well, that kind of looks like a duality. But when we look at the various dimensions, we find that these dimensions are also energy levels. So what we see in terms of transmission, transition, and transmutation is we see the matter, antimatter, and the dark matter the same way. So the physical matter, of course, is part of the matter state. The matter state does have a plasmatic state, but the plasma state can remain exclusively in the plasma state. And so when we look at the universe, it becomes a choice whether or not it manifests into the physicality. So that this is the thing that we have to understand. So when we're looking at these energies and how they relate, the surface to volume ratios make a difference because they reflect on energy transfer. And of course, they deal with the spheres. And so that all the spheres are not the same size. So when we say 1 and 1, they're not necessarily the same size. And so if the volume changes, then the surface area changes. And these become part of the feeding dimensions. And the changeability in those two factors will obviously affect the answer, which is the feedback dimension. What we have to understand is the feedback dimension does not eliminate the feeding dimensions. In order to maintain these dimensions, there has to be a constant feeding and a constant feedback, and they all have to work together. So the two feeding dimensions plus the answer gives us three feedback dimensions. Because let's say you were hungry and you needed feeding. And now you needed to leave the table where you were feeding or dining, and you have to go somewhere, let's say work, for instance. You're not feeding, are you? Like you're not taking a feed bag like you would give to a horse that they go walk around the track with a feed bag on their head. And yet you are maintaining your MAGRAV condition. So therefore, somehow you must be continually feeding. So you're not feeding from the table, you're feeding from something else. Whether you're feeding from the table or feeding from somewhere else, you're getting feedback. And so this is going on, and it's going on in three dimensions. And you're just observing what's going on. So you're not in any of those three dimensions. You're in a fourth dimension all by yourself. So when we're looking at the energy transfer state, we see that there's an atomic state and a nanostate and a GAN state, but these are all in the physical state as we understand them. And then in between, there's an energy transfer state. And it's a good thing because we need to be able to get, shall we say, that stairway to go up from the atomic state to the nanostate, because the nanostate is in a higher energy state. So we need to climb up the stairs and then climb up the stairs again to the GAN state. But equally, we need to climb down the stairs from the GAN state to the nanostate and then from the nanostate to the atomic state. But there's no rule that says that we have to go one step at a time. We can skip steps. And maybe we can just go from the atomic state to the GAN state. And this all depends on our susceptibility, and it affects our matter-gen convergence. And these are all determined by magnetical and gravitational field forces. So we find that the transfer state that takes us from the transmission to the transition also has to be in 3 dimensions. And then to go from the transition state to the transmutation state, well, there's another transfer state. And it too has to be in 3 dimensions. So these transfer state dimensions affect the transition matter transition. So now we have complete spheres in 5 states: transmission, transition, transmutation, and transfer states in between. And then when we look at the creation of the universe, and we say, how is the universe created? Well, the universe exists from energy. And since energy is positive, the charge of energy is positive. So the charge that we say of energy is not a concern. The direction of the motion is a concern because the energy is always in motion. So is it coming or going? And if it's coming or going, then it has to work in combination with something else. And so we find that all things working in combination, and this becomes important. But now we have different energy states. And so we've discussed the physical matter states, and we know that there's a plasmatic matter state. Do the rules apply to the plasmatic, dynamic plasmatic state? And what about the staircase that goes from state to state that we call the transfer state? Why not? So the plasma rule is the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. And on Earth, we abuse that rule and it becomes a conflict point. And at that point of conflict, we get this binding. Now, some people would say that that binding is a war zone, but that binding is also conflict resolution point because it becomes a point of containment. And once you have a point of containment, now you can get the energy because you have a field to contain that energy in. And of course, you've got to let it run. You can't just catch it and hold it and stop it because energy is always in motion. So you have to give it a track. And so a lot of people, too many people on this planet, understand that energy binding is a self-serving need. But if we do it at the expense of others and ignore the consequences, which are that the person we lie, cheat, or steal from, or even murder at the extreme, they need this energy because it's binding for their self-serving needs. And if you steal it from them, instead of getting it from where you got it from originally, then they are diminished. And so it causes a reaction. And in the absence of knowledge on Earth, retaliation is a common emotion. It's unfortunate. Call it a human fault, a human failing, a human weakness. But it's very natural, isn't it? So, did we have that as a baby? And the answer is no. So that means that is an acquired emotion. What do you mean by acquired emotion? Well, it's just like food. You like it hot and spicy, and someone likes it plain. It's an acquired taste. Someone likes it rare, someone likes it well done. It's an acquired taste. So These emotions in the matter state are acquired tastes. And so we use that as justification. Well, let's see if we can acquire something else here. So we were forced to learn about the cups of life, and this became the pandemic dividend because we learned about the monatomic process and the monatomic science and how we were able to create different ganses. We created different cups of life. We created emotional cups and we created physical cups. And the combination of these cups were representative of the cups of man. And then we created other ganses. And all of these became a part of the radiance manifestation, which meant that when we created the cups, we didn't bring the gans. We created the gans. And we even created amino acid and water. And now we can create many earth ganses. And they come in different colors. So when we look at the periodic table of elements, we find that the difference between all the elements is their density, because their density has to do with mass. And so one would think that the earth ganses would also have that difference. And we know that there is a difference because we see sometimes the layers within the bottles that hold the gans. We see the fluffy gans at the top and the coarser gans at the bottom, even though all the ganses settle to the bottom because they're more dense than water. So that is obvious, isn't it? Because you can see the water in the bottles and it's less dense than the gans. So we know that density is a factor here. And of course, we can see that the ganses are more gravitational than the water. So we can see that as well. So it's logical to conclude that there's a relationship between gravitational field forces and density. So when we're looking at the principal matter and we say, okay, well, the PM texts that are traveling through the universe are part of the principal matter. And when they come together within the earth, then they converge and create the principal matter, the transition matter, and the convergence matter, and they convert it into the plasmagen matter, which is still plasmatic and only becomes part of our physicality when we have a field interaction, which we call inertia, which we call a maggrav. But that maggrav is gravitational. And so we can have a maggrav exclusively in the plasma state. We can have a maggrav exclusively in the physical state. And we can have a maggrav that has kind of a duality between the plasma state and the physical state. This is what we call the matter plasma dimension, where we have the physical state, which we can touch and see, the seeing being part of the gravitational reality because our pupils are black. And then we have the plasma reality, which is part of the feeding. And we can't touch it, we can't see it. So either way, we find that our understanding of the plasma science is all based on the feedback. And that feedback could be in the plasmatic state or in the physical state. These are all part of the matter plasma dimensions. A long time ago, when I was introduced to physics, I mean, a long time ago, over 30 years ago, I read a book about Michio Kaku that wrote Hyperspace. And he's an American physicist, science communicator, futurologist, and writer of popular science. He's a professor of theoretical physics at the City College of New York, at the CUNY Graduate Center. And so this Hyperspace book, is a scientific odyssey through parallel universes, time warps, and the 10th dimension. Pretty exotic stuff. I was very impressed. But then there was another book from Michael Talbot, The Holographic Universe. This is a very important subject in today. Michael Talbot was born in Michigan, and they say he was a versatile author whose works traversed the realms of science fiction, mysticism, and theoretical physics. Quite the range. And his most notable contribution, of course, was the book, The Holographic Universe, where he compellingly amalgamates concepts from quantum physics and Eastern mysticism to propose that the universe might be understood as a vast, interconnected hologram. So, visible, but not tangible. So that also becomes part of the matter state. And so when we're looking exclusively at matter state, we say, well, matter state is an affirmation of life. And if we say, well, that's the only reality, since it's only a small piece of the pie, it's more a denial of life, isn't it? Because we're missing the rest of the program. So life is based on equality. And so the laws of conservation have to be based on the same thing. So when we look at the science of physics, we say that's part of the matter state. And the science of spirituality, well, that's part of the plasma state, isn't it? But in the plasma science, everything is basically related to its magnetical and gravitational field forces. And as scientists are constantly looking for this unified field theory, it's a real wonder that they're ignoring us. This has been a goal of so many scientists, and it's one of the reasons they write so many books. And in physics, the unified field theory is a type of field theory that allows all that is usually thought of as a fundamental force and elementary particles to be written in terms of a pair of physical and virtual fields. So according to modern discoveries in physics, forces are not transmitted directly between interacting objects, but instead are described and interpreted by intermediary entities called fields. I wonder what boxers would think of this. But I digress. We talked about the relationship of one-on-one inequality. We find it equals more than two. And so we have to understand that the one and the one are not necessarily the same one, but when they come into combination, that there's a bonus. And that bonus we call a synergy. But the synergy is not just restricted to one and one. One could be a combination already, and the other one could be an additional one. So we have a bigger one and a smaller one, and when we bring the two together, well, we get more than both, but both are more than three. And so we can extend all of this knowledge to relate to the Earth's prejudice, the table of elements, because there's definitely more than three. In the star formation model, there's four. So when we bring these two together, we hitch them up. But what happens when we do blending? What happens then? And somehow we get this black hole kind of looks like the pupil of your eye. So what we see is that things working in combination, when you take two things and you create a third thing, and we've already agreed to that. But when you blend them and you put them together in a field, then you come up with something else. And that something else may not be related to what you started with. So it depends on the components, and it depends on the external forces, among other things. So we find that last week we talked about painting. And when we were finger painting, we liked the three basic colors, red, yellow, and blue. And we found that when we mixed the colors, we could get oranges and greens. Greens are part of what we see on color computer monitors. And those colors are red, green, and blue. And from those three colors, we get all the colors plus white and black. So what we call RGB color is red, green, and blue. And we tried, didn't we? We really tried. We tried to get yellow and orange and some other colors. And then we decided to, shall we say, blend them. And we got this brown color. So we see that all of these are part of the physical matter state. So we mixed all the colors together. We couldn't get yellow, we couldn't get orange, and we couldn't get white either. So for example, let's look at an acrylic painting, because there's some unique properties of acrylic paint. And when I say look at it, I mean, we're the observers, right? And so we're going to try and see what the artist is doing here. And so the artist has delivered blobs of color, and let's see what happens. So we found that by blending these colors together, you could see that there were different densities, and the colors were overlapping. And then, of course, the artist was using different techniques. And so these blobs started to take some shape. And if we fast forward, we created an image. And this image was a picture. But this picture seems to be a little out of focus. But what it represents is that the different colors of paint had different densities. And so the colors were overlapping. Now, the way our eye moves, it moves digitally. We can't scan. We look, we move, we look, we move, we look, we move. And somehow we get an analog picture. And so the picture that we get with respect to the eye and the image that we capture within the field of the eye is a point. So how do we get the image of this picture? Because it doesn't seem to be in very good focus. I mean, it just looks like a bunch of spots and swirls and things. And yet we could see the man and the dog and the flowers and the trees and the pathway. And that is the blur fill that our brain fulfills. So we convert the digital eye movement into an analog blur fill, and we create this image. So that's exactly what happens to all the colors. that we see, all the colors, well, all the colors in the rainbow. And there are colors that we don't see. Well, some do. They call them auras. So we know about that. And these auras kind of reflect the soul of the physicality. And we can see the colors. And they remind us of the color wheel. But the soul of physicality works as a form of encapsulation. And we know that from Kirlian photography because we can see that the image of the aura is beyond the boundary of the physicality. And so we know that the physicality grows into the aura. And we also know that if we take a leaf and take a picture of its aura and maybe cut a part of it off, that we can still see the aura even though we've cut off the physical component. So the aura remains. You can't cut the aura. And all the components of the physicality are manifest from the aura, from the soul of physicality. And we know that we have many, many parts. So we're, shall we say, a little bit more complex than a leaf. We have arms and legs, but we also have kidneys and stomachs and lungs. And all of these are overlapping fields. And we know that because we have gravitational confirmation, but we also have to understand that in the beginning, there was hydrogen. And we know it's hydrogen because it emits a spectrum, a color spectrum, a visible color spectrum, unique to hydrogen. And so we know that it's hydrogen. And interestingly enough, doesn't matter where in the universe that color spectrum exists. It's unique to hydrogen. But the color spectrum comes from the magnetical field forces of the sun interacting with those of the earth and those of the universe. And those are all converging magnetical field forces coming together in this gravitational context. And of course, oxygen has the same rule set, but it has a different emission spectrum, unique, and also, again, manifest in color. And doesn't matter where the oxygen is in the universe, it'll always have that same emission spectrum, that same manifestation of that fingerprint in color that's visible to us. So what we're seeing when we're seeing is the magnetical residue, a residue of the attraction of gravitational forces of convergence with the repulsion of the magnetical forces of divergence, which is why each of us is an independent variable in an interdependent universe. Because in order for us to exist on Earth, we're dependent on Earth. And since Earth exists in the universe, we're dependent on the universe as well. So those who think they can live without it, well, hard to do. And our communication with the rest of the universe has an area of transition. The supragranular layer consists of only 3 layers around the brain. And so that what we take into our brain through our eyes then is converted into our vision. However, that's what we see with our eyes. But we don't eat with our eyes. So there has to be another line of communication. And the transition zone for that line of communication is through the supragranular layer, which encapsulates the brain and communicates with the rest of the universe. So our brain is in physicality. and the universe is operating in a plasma reality. And all of us are part of this reality all around the world. And this world is spinning. We're not spinning. We're on the earth that is spinning. So there's a rotating field. So each of us is a point. But when we look at the earth and how it's spinning, then we're just a blur. We're just an analogous blur. And that analogy is humanity. And each of us is an independent variable in that analogous blur. And so that's our point of view. So what we're seeing on Earth is from our point of view. And the universal community is looking from their point of view. And of course, the creator is looking from his point of view. And what he needs is the feedback from our point of view. So there's an exchange of energy. What kind of brush are we using? So we find that we're using magnetic and gravitational field forces. So since these PM ticks are coming to us, as we said, they're magnetical. And if they're magnetical, that means they're coming to us because we're gravitational. So our point of view is gravitational. And since white is every color and black is no color, that means the white is coming to us, but the black is going away from us. So now we understand the direction of the field flow. We are absorbing the light. We are absorbing what we see, and we're interpreting what we see. And this is one of the reasons we only believe what we see, not realizing that what we see is coming from another source. And so we only see that, well, that little piece of pie, that's all we see, right? That's that little piece of pie at that moment in time, that point. And when we look up or we look around, but if we don't look, then forget about it. We don't see anything. So what we see is a combination of all the main colors. And so we see the main common colors in the rainbow in 7 segments. So we find that these segments, because they're gravitational, converge at a gravitational point. And we say that gravitational point is more dense. So if the gravitational point is in the center, then the circumference is magnetical. And it's not just one point, but every segment of the pie has the same. The rules are the same. The higher strength feeds the weaker strength. So that's the whole picture. We're only seeing part of the picture, and that's our point of view at a particular point in time. And so our particular point in time is our segment. 1 out of 7 of the main colors. And this is an important number to understand, like 7 days in the week, because we know the story of Utnapishtim. That was Noah and his ark, and how he saved everything on this planet. And everything came in 2 by 2. but he didn't have any fish. Only land creatures and some humans. I wonder if he had the plants as well, or did he need to have them? So the question is, well, do you remember? Well, the thing about Noah and his ark is because Noah has a story. And that story is the same on all 7 continents. And each continent has its own civilization. So that story is the same story. And that story was the Great Flood. And that story was many generations ago, and it wiped everything out. This was the great transgenerational washing. We all like to do a lot of washing. So when we look at these colors of the rainbow, we see that there's 7 colors that are main colors. And then beyond those colors, we know from our color spectrums that inside the blue, which is on the inside of the arc, in the non-visible, it tends to go to the ultraviolet. And the red, which is on the outside of the arc, in the non-visible, goes to the infrared. And it doesn't matter where you look, the Earth is spinning, but, you know, as we move around, the blue is still on the inside and the red is still on the outside, and that continues and all the way around. And it's consistent. The blue is always on the inside and the red is always on the outside, except when we have a double rainbow. And then things flip around. And then we find that the blue is on the outside and the red is on the inside. And so the relationship in the non-visible spectrum beyond the blue is the ultraviolet, and within the red is the infrared. And so we find there's this zone, there's an infrared zone in between the 2 rainbows. And when you look at the color, which is no color, it's invisible, kind of darker. What that means. So when we die, they say your soul crosses the bardo. And so this rainbow is part of the peace dome. It's a reflection of what's going on Earth, and it seems to be well organized. So within the Earth, we have the blue on the inside, but the outside, the blue is on the outside, creates a pathway. And that pathway is for our soul to go home. And now we're saying, please take your body with you. Thou shalt not litter. So when we look at the matter plasma, it's from an earthbound point of view. And we see that the earth part is the feedback part, because that's the energy we're getting from the sun. And the double rainbow is the feedback part, and that's the energy we're getting from the earth. So we find that in between there is the feeding part. So we've already established that the feeding part is part of the magnetical. The feedback part is part of the gravitational. And we've already established that within the rainbow, the blue is on the inside and the red is on the outside. So the blue is gravitational and the red is magnetical. And we've already established that beyond the color, the visible color, going into the ultraviolet, which is non-visible, is on the blue side, making it more gravitational. And so the infrared is magnetical, even though it's non-visible. And so when we look at the colors and we see the relationship of the magnetic to the gravitational, we see that there's a relationship between wavelength and frequency. And the measurement of the wavelength and the frequency are exclusive to the physical science. And there's a susceptibility. As the wavelength increases, the frequency decreases. And then the opposite is true. And so always the relationship between the wavelength and the frequency is constant. That's why the speed of light is constant. But the color is not constant. The color is changeable. And when we put all the colors together, we get white. And when there's no colors, well, then it's black. So we see the colors that are coming, and we don't see any colors when they're going. So if we see that the speed of light is dependent on the wavelength and frequency, and the more dense it is, the more mass it is, according to the periodic table of prejudice that the Earth has, then we find that light has mass, because that's the only accounting for the difference. So the soul has mass. And we're talking about the physicality. And if we're talking about two dimensions, we're talking about the inverse square law, where we see that the light intensity increases as you get closer to the light. Well, that applies to the three dimensions, the inverse cube law, same thing. So where we said that energy is equal to mc squared, well, energy is equal to mc cubed. And c is replaced by wavelength and frequency. So what does that mean? So we have the gravitational field force at the center, what we see from our point of view, and the magnetical field forces coming in. And then we see the manifestation and the physicality of the visible light. And so there's a red, and then comes the next color, and that's orange, and we find that it is on the inside, on the gravitational side. So if it's on the gravitational side, it needs to be more dense. Then comes the yellow, it's more dense again. Then the green, then the blue, and the dark blue, then the violet. So as we continue into the ultraviolet, then we get into the gravitational force field. And in our eyes, we see the iris, and in the center, we see the pupil, and it's black. And so all of these lights that are coming in, they are different from the paint. They are different in the sequence, and they're different in the way that they're combined. So when we know the matter plasma dimension, when we blend red with blue, we get, when we blend yellow with blue, we get green. And when we blend, red with yellow, we get orange. But in our computer monitors, we get every color when we blend red, green, and blue together. So the color that is reflected from the paint is different from the color that we get from the interaction of the energies coming from the sun. Because the sun is bringing the light, and then our interpretation of that light comes in colors. And we see that light, which is all at the same speed, within our Earth space, is affected by the gravitational force, and there's a curvature. And since gravity seeks density, then that curvature and that color is impacted by the density. And so when we look at the transmission spectrum, all we see is that little point of containment, which is a containment of the plasmatic interaction. And then beyond that, we have the ultraviolet, which has a lower frequency. And then we'll be beyond, on the other side, we have the ultraviolet, which has a higher frequency. So the ultraviolet is gravitational, the infrared is magnetical. And so when we have an extreme amount of high frequency, it creates like a bar-like image, doesn't it? It almost looks, we don't see the frequency, we see a flat line. And then on the infrared, as the frequency diminishes, that frequency gets lower and lower and lower, and also is working towards a flat line. Not as thick maybe, but still a flat line. And then we see that there's one point that we come where we can go one step beyond. And so that's the difference between the surface superficiality of the physical and the internal substance of the plasma substrate. Because regardless of where you are, from one point beyond and one step beyond on the other side, there are all these points. And our vision combines all of these points together in an analogous blur fill. And that's created by our interpretation of what we see. And if it's only restricted to what we see, we can clearly see why the plasma science has limitations. So conservation of susceptibility has to go beyond. Not only are we dependent variables, but we are independent plasmatic variables. And so there's a magnetical susceptibility and a gravitational susceptibility, and there's a balance. And so we see that these are all in 3 dimensions, and it's not linear, is it? Because we can clearly see the sine wave. And so we find from the gyroscopes that we have to have a rotating field in all 3 dimensions in order for us to maintain a balance. And in the process of attaining that balance, we have less density. So if we understand the pH table, and we say the acid side is less dense and the alkaline side is more dense, then we can say that the light that we absorb from the sun is the magnetical light, and the light that we see from our paint is the gravitational. And so when we're talking about Z-axis transmutation quadrants, so below, so above, so to the left, and so to the right, these are all the basic rules of range transition. And it isn't the 4 fields of the unified field theory. It's 2 fields of the plasmatic theory of magnetical and gravitational interaction of force fields. So we have a physical reality, and we have a plasmatic reality, and we have a lower energy and a higher energy. And so we find that this is how it's reflected in our light. The light that we have with respect to our higher density is the colors that we create and paint. If we look at the colors that are around us, that are created, are the colors that are brought to us. And these colors, in order to manifest in physicality, have to have a mass, have to have a density, and have to have a field interaction, which we call inertia, between the magnetical field forces from the sun, the earth, and the universe, converging gravitationally to our point of view. And the rules are the same. Whether we're in the atomic state, the monatomic, polyatomic, or the plasma field state. And then, of course, we can go one step beyond. And we always can go higher, right? But what happens on the lower end? We have this barrier. How do we go beyond on that side? Because we are equal. Because it's a two-way street. And how do we do that? And when you answer that question, and then you understand that the earth has gold in the fields, and the Keshe Foundation has created fields of gold. So we have a path choice to make based on path link and susceptibility. So our attention is part of our emission, isn't it? And our retention, well, it's also part of our emission. So we interact to create the emission of intention. In other words, what we give is what we want to give. And we also give what we don't need. So we have to give both. And for those who take, they can take what they need. And those who are in need can accept the gift of our emission. Because when we give what we don't need and we give what we want, then we get what we want. So if you want peace, we will get peace because we set up an antenna for message feeding and a feedback manifestation. So all of this transmission has to be tuned through a transition. And how do we do this? We select one force, which is magnetical, and balance it by a force selection of another gravitational force. And so this resulting selections feeds this MAGRAV manifestation. And the selection process is predetermined. And we can predetermine it by choosing the peace dome of intention. And why not? Because that's how the universe was created, wasn't it? So the emission of intention affects standard folding deviation and leaves no room for war. The transmutation manifests in balance with the peace dome. We have to understand that. So our perception balance is a plasma perception balance. And for many of us, the knowledge and wisdom that gives us deeper insight. And we call that experience. But that will change a man's perspective, won't it? It allows us to reflect on life. But is that what life is? It's just a reflection? Is it just a painting? Or is life what we emit? Is there an artistry, not just in the painting, but in the organization and the cooperation? Or are we just finger painters and just create a hodgepodge, a discord, and enhance it with betrayal? So we look at the pH of the MAGRAV, and we see that the rotating field affects the transmutation transition. So we see the four fields of the star formation and physicality create a plasmatic field. And of course, we say that ours is a blue planet. But since we're absorbing every color, we're not a brown planet, right? When we do our finger painting, and we mess all the colors together, we get a dark color. And yet when we look at the planet, we see that it's blue. Is that a reflection or is that an emission? So the speed of rotation transmutes in both the micro and the macro. The pH of peace transcends all of the ranges. There are many points on the field strength of the dove. And we are practicing that with the nutrition and wellness transmutation test that we've been running for 3 months. Started in November. One's coming up in December. There'll be another one in January 2025. And the research needs to keep going because this is the future. The future is all in the transmutation because the range transition transcends the Z-axis transmutation dimensions. See, the law of conservation governs not only the covalent, but the trivalent and tetravalent bonding attributes. And containment acquires the gravitational tensity and mass. But the soul of the man cannot be abandoned. We discard a lot of things, but that cannot be discarded. That is always there. And this is what we've been trying to teach for 568 Knowledge Seeker workshops in a row every Thursday, transcending the limitations of nuclear science, trying to achieve the greater oneness of the plasma science, so that we can not only bring peace on earth, but bring peace to the universe and join the universal community, because we are the universal community. We are the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Teachings on Plasma Science, welcoming all the beautiful knowledge seekers learning about the new selection process of the new plasma science. There's a World Peace Treaty we've always asked. Sign it with a pen, sign it with true intention, sign it with your soul. Because you cannot lie in outer space. There's no poker games in outer space. Everyone can see your true intention, and they will not fight you. They will just leave you lonely. And you'll see that man is a reactor of a three-dimensional transcendent universe. There are no straight lines through the field transmutation. Man can go into outer space without a peace dome. Can man transmute through the dimensions of history? So we see the sphere creation takes the peace dome with you in the X, Y, and Z axis dimensions. And the color density gains momentum for the physical transmission dimensions. Plasma science needs to be delivered daily via the peace dome in exchange for peace on Earth. So welcome to the new outer space age, and that's the end of the class. I hope you all enjoyed the class. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Let's see if that triggered any questions or queries from our participants. Feel free to open your mic. That's why you have them. When Mr. Keshe is talking about replacing the defense workers in a way, not replacing the workers, but giving them a new technology or a new toy to play with. If we have millions of people working with the plasma, I think they'll be talking about it quite a bit, wouldn't you? And this will bring, if there's 25 million people working in this industry or moving into space or whatever they're going to be doing, there's going to be a lot of talk about plasma and the new words, the nanomaterial, and all kinds of things, magravs and star formations. And so I would think if we had all these people talking about it, it certainly will, in a way, entice the population to get interested in what this new science is. That's quite a lot of people working in a lot of different areas. So this may be, in a way, a launching point, I think, to like spread at least the first interest in the plasma technology across, where they're starting, the population will be talking about this in a way. They're saying there's a lot of people working in these industries. What is this new nano thing they're creating, or what's this GANS for health or other things? So I think this is a beautiful plan coming together where immediately, in a way, you'll have millions of new, could we call them knowledge seekers, Alex? Or would they just be doing it for a job?
Isn't that a good question? So, you see a lot of people who have a career, they've done 30, 40 years working at the same job. And I often wonder, is that all you want? Because it all depends on what you get in terms of fulfillment. And the knowledge seeking is inherent, but there has to be a continuation of knowledge seeking. And in order to have that, there has to be that desire. And that desire comes from the emotion. So if we understand that within our field containment, there is an existence, but that's just a small piece of the pie. And if we are humble so as not to be greedy, or we don't want to be greedy so as to be humble, it's a contrived, noble idea. You have to understand that we are interdependent. So the peace is a natural prerequisite for that. You can't have a warmonger as a neighbor. So if you want to have peace in your community, then you have a peaceful neighbor. And we have to understand that and accept that as a matter of fact. It's not that we need to be a special knowledge seeker to understand that. But what you're talking about, Mark, is a very important point, because there's a practicality to it. And this is one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, the practicality, because for the majority of people on this planet, the practicality is living day to day and covering the expenses day to day, covering the rent or the mortgage month to month.
You mean surviving day to day, more or less?
Yeah.
Trying to.
Yeah, without, understanding that the universe is a benevolent place. So, you can imagine how stressful it is to move, to go from one place to another. Or let's add some stress. You get evicted. Now you've got to move. Or let's add some more stress. Someone comes in and bombs your city. If you survive, then you've got to run for your life. And you forget all about your belongings. You just take what you can grab and go. And you start again. So that becomes very stressful. Well, think about it. When you were born, you didn't come with any baggage. And what a stressful trip that was. I mean, really think about it. You navigated somehow. You don't know how you navigated. You obviously weren't in control. And yet you had the faith to overcome that stress. And it wasn't stressful. Not really. It was a welcoming. You came into your mother's womb nice and warm, and she was loving. And so that was good. And then you come into the life and you see the stress. And you say, well, wow, you know, did I make a mistake? Is that what life is all about? So we just forget that we've gone through the most stressful thing, being born. And we survived very, very well. And we did that with literally blind faith, because we certainly didn't see it with the eyes. We didn't have eyes to see. And we didn't see it with our brain. We didn't have a brain to process the blur film. So how do we carry that knowledge? How do we carry that knowledge that we created a body, that we created organs, and that they all work together and functioned? How do we do that? And we just dismiss it, you know, like it's a dirty pair of socks. Well, that's the way I was born, and, you know, thank God I was born. Now I'm going to do it my way. Really? That is not being humble. And that is not being a knowledge seeker. That's being a limiter, a terrorist, a warmonger. And as long as we can operate in the lower energy states by those rules and get away with it, where through the delay and consequences, it's out of sight, out of mind, or, you know, we don't see the one-to-one correlation between our conduct and the consequences, it's okay. Kick the can down the road, so to speak. But why do we choose that? Because it's the lowest energy state. And are we humble in that regard? Really, that's contrived. The humbleness is being able to draw the energy from the universe and process it on behalf of the universe, not on behalf of your self-serving needs. You have self-serving needs, and you need to absorb that energy. That gives you your gravitational stability. And from there, you discard what you don't need, but also you emit what you want. And so that's where the twinity comes in. And when you emit what you want, then you will get what you want. And that, what you want, will converge with that what you need. Only if you want that on behalf of. So you want to be a provider for your family, which means you want to provide on behalf of your family. That's how you create peace and prosperity and growth and harmony. If you want on behalf of your pocketbook, your position, and your fake power, then that's what you will get. You will get fake peace. You will get stress. You will get war. You will get disharmony. And you won't get glory, because the truth will always come out. Over to you, Mark.
Okay, anyone else? Imagine if the instead of all these articles on war in the newspaper every day, we're going to see some beautiful articles about scientists have discovered that even a grain of sand has a soul. Wow. I didn't know a grain of sand had a soul. I wonder where my soul is. I think it's going to be quite beautiful, or other people have gotten elevated for going through a certain process. We're going to diminish all these, how many people got killed, and the new weapon systems we're shipping, and the billions we're spending, and we need to defeat this one and that one. I think it's going to be a whole paradigm shift of totally away from discussing war and killing into calmness, elevation, and just researching the plasma technology. And then, of course, when the universal community gets involved, this will be a whole new dimension that people may not quite be ready for, but hopefully they will. As we know, they're from the same creator as we are. We just don't understand the process of creation and the creator. So I foresee a whole new, we'll need a lot of writers as well for these articles. So there's going to be positions for everyone, I believe, to take part in this process, whether you're a researcher or a writer, a
Yeah, for sure.
reporter. Yeah.
And the subject that came up this week, you know, with the blessing of the weapons, this is the hardest lesson that we have to learn. We have to understand that the hand that caresses the child and that hand that pulls the trigger on the gun to kill someone else's child is the same hand. And how do you differentiate from one action from another? And so that becomes a contrived story, isn't it? And so the truth of the matter is that there is a reason why one caresses the child and why one kills. And whether he kills a child or whether he kills the father of the child or whether he kills, you know, the son of a parent or whether he kills the parent of the son, everyone is someone's child. So how do you make that determination? And the only way that you can determine that is from your point of view. And when your point of view is that of your color, and your color influences your prejudice. And so we find that we're all colors. We're all part of the human family, and we come in different colors. So to be prejudicial based on color is a false notion. And to fight based on color is a false notion. So what's the fighting all about? So there's some hidden motivation. And so what I'm saying is that as a human making a decision, whether to caress a human, a child, or whether to kill a human or a child, is not a human decision. Because all of us came to this planet, we were all born the same way. So where did the divergence come from? And once you have the answer to that question, then you will understand how, when we look at the universal community, they don't ask what color you are. They don't ask what town you're from or what country you're from. When they ask where you're from Earth. And everyone knows that the Earth is the home of the humanity family. Is that the truth? Is that the truth? So you're the head of your family and you caress one child and you shoot your other child. By what determination would you make that decision? When both childs are part of your family. You can see that that's a contrived decision. And that's where the problem sits. And you can only make that decision based on physicality. Once you get into the plasma reality, which engages the creator, and the creator creates everything, and everything is good because the creator created it. Why would you create something that's bad? So that is the rule. That's why the plasma science, the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. So it feeds it. So we need to feed also. That's the rule. Back to you.
Okay, any questions from our panelists, our guests? Whether you agree or disagree, or would like to change the subject and go into a totally different position. And perhaps this reverence for life, because obviously at this point we have a total irreverence for life in so many different ways. I think this will be another part of the ethos where we start respecting all life, no matter what it is, even if it's something we don't like, perhaps, like fire ants around our house or getting in there, where we learn to change the condition rather than to straight away go for the killing of the entity. I think this will be another revelation to mankind that we can respect all life, and even life that we can't even see in the physical dimension, because this is what we're probably heading into. I was thinking about Noah, and again, in the matter state, whether this is Grandma's chat or a made-up story in a way, but in the matter state, there'd be no way you could possibly take two animals. I was thinking, or a pair of each, two elephants and two tigers and two lions and two hyenas and the rest of this. So, did Noah, what Mr. Kesh was saying, if you become perhaps a captain, and obviously Noah was a captain of some sort of ship, as he said, to transport 200 of you to a wedding on Mars would be not such an easy task. We got to get all the arms and legs and everything else in the right position. But perhaps Noah did the same thing where he took these entities as a captain on the soul level within himself and then transported them or allowed them to remanifest themselves after the water subsided. Could that be a possibility of Noah's Ark? Very similar to what Mr. Kesh is talking about, these captains or these pilots, which instead of transmuting 1,000 souls or 1,000,000 souls, you could uh, basically put them inside of a captain, and it'd be much easier for the transmutation. I'm thinking maybe that's, if that story was accurate, maybe that's what Noah did in a way. I don't think there'd be enough room on an ark for them all. Never mind the plants and the rest of it. But again, it just could be something that was put in there, as we see similar stories throughout different time periods. But the flood seems to be one of the main themes in a lot of these cultures. But I was thinking perhaps that would be the way to do it.
Well, we all know that we can cryogenically store sperm. And obviously, the sperm takes a lot less space than a person.
Correct, yeah.
Or an elephant, a lot less space and a lot less mess, too.
Yeah, who's going to clean up after these guys?
Exactly, yeah. So that was why it was really hard. Even as a child, when I heard that story, it was hard for me. I was asking that question. But and then you don't need just a space for all the animals, but you need a space for the food for the animals. And of course, isn't that what we're looking at, the spaceships? They are vessels, and they carry people, and they need the food, and they need to take care of the waste. And then isn't this the way NASA organizes their space flight? So the majority of the space flights, of course, don't carry people, so they don't have to worry about that nonsense, right? But the point of the matter is that if you, in your example, are captain of the ship, and you're taking a crew, like you say, of 200 people, and you go to another planet, and these people start to be warmongers on that planet, right? Like Christopher Columbus, right? He comes into paradise and he decides to destroy paradise. That just shows you what an idiot he was. And you would have to say, well, wait a second, how did you get that? Because you weren't born with that kind of maliciousness, were you? It was an acquired feeling. So what you have to look at is that after the Great Flood, humanity had this acquired feeling of warmongering. And so if you were the captain of that ship and you transmuted everybody to another planet, they would come with the same peace-loving intention that a baby has. But the difference is with Noah, if he were to bring cryogenically preserved sperm, that sperm would have to go through the same process of impregnation and growth and babyhood, childhood, adulthood. Whereas you, as the navigator of the plasma spaceship, you take adults and you deliver adults. You don't have to go through that transition from going from babyhood to adulthood, right? And so when would you acquire that violent stream? And so we understand that there's a threshold between the physical science and the plasmatic science that you cannot carry that trait. So the specific answer to your question, that if after the Great Flood that we had this acquired trait of warmongering, and with the plasma science you cannot transmit that trait, then we have to understand that there's something else going on. And from our point of view, when we think of colors, we think of something that we can manifest. But when you look at the universe, the colors that we get are delivered to us from the universe, and that's the difference. So when we're talking about the physical manifestation in the post-flood era, that's part of the physicality. And when we look at the transmutation from the plasma navigator, plasma captain, that's in the transmutation dimension. And that's the difference. Back to you.
Good. I don't think we've gotten the rest of the story yet. There's still more to fill in, I would think, for Mr. Kesh. As he said, we may get up to 5,000 teachings in the next 100 years. So there's much, much more to add to the
Well, I
knowledge,
think we're going to get
our knowledge.
a lot of teachings in the next few weeks, actually, because the game is changing.
You mean
point-
more than one a week?
No, we're talking about, I think, the intensity of the teaching, because we are definitely advancing, because all of the teaching, or let's put it this way, in my lifetime, all of the teaching was physical. And in order to understand the plasma teaching, we had to understand that there's an existence of that plasma reality. And we had to understand how that plasma reality actually affects us in our physicality and in our practical world. And as I say, we have to understand that we were born. So that's part of the plasma reality. And, I'm guilty as anybody that, I never questioned that, how I was born. Well, the reason I never questioned is I guess I got tired of the same answer. the answer was always, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Well, you don't know. Please step aside. Show me someone who does know. And that's where we're at. We are governed by a whole host of political leaders who don't know and don't want to know. And so that's where the limitation comes from. So is the academic community going to lead us into the wilderness, or you know, is the military going to do that? No. Is the Keshe Foundation going to do that? No. The only people who can do that is the humanity. When we start to realize that we're not Chinese, we're not Americans, we're not French, we're humanity. We're all part of the same family. And we all have our variability and our diversity. And it's wonderful. That's what makes life so beautiful. What a boring life would it be? Can you imagine if everything was colored gray? Wouldn't that be boring? Well, and that's, you know, that's part of one reality. That's unfortunate. So we are not in that reality. We're in a different reality. And so we need to exercise our knowledge and seek out the truth. And the truth isn't so much in outer space as it's within our inner space, because that's our sanctity, that's our home, that's our soul. And our soul will never lie to us. Our soul is our best friend. So the only way that we can operate in violation of the intention, the peaceful intention of the soul, is to ignore it. And we do that at our own peril. Because now we are no longer operating on behalf of humanity. Back to you, Mark.
Well, the soul certainly likes to play hide and seek. It doesn't always come out and share with us everything. So he might be playing the game of catch me if you can. And again, it's our responsibility to get back to our creator. I just wanted to say hello to Micah. I haven't seen Micah. Is there anything you'd like to share with us? It's been a while, I think, since you've come into the meeting, but welcome back. And if Micah doesn't have anything to say, I was going to ask Jefferson if there's any update on his car MagRav. I know you've mentioned it at least once, and you've had some very good feelings. I wasn't even aware that the Keshe Foundation products do not go into Brazil. Is that correct, Jefferson? If you're able to open your mic. If not, maybe we'll hear an update at another time.
Hi, Mark. Yes, yes, I can.
Oh, good.
Hello,
Yes.
everyone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Micah opened his mic too. Would you allow Micah to say a couple words, Jefferson, and
Yes,
come
of
back
course.
in? I'm looking forward to hearing from both of you.
Okay.
Micah?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jefferson. No, we cannot hear you well. Either come closer or a better connection.
Is that better? Is
A
that
hair.
better?
Yeah, that's it. Now you've gotten
I'm
that
sorry, yeah. I don't
communication
have
line.
the greatest connection here, I guess. But anyhow, thank you very much, Mark, and greetings to all the Knowledge Seeker family. Very nice to be back here with you all. I'm definitely got a lot to catch up with. I've had pretty busy life, and I need to get back into all the teachings I've missed.
Yeah, it can be
But
all-consuming, the matter state, can't it?
yes, it can indeed. But it feels good to be back with all of you, and I look forward to many more to come here very soon.
Great. Perfect.
Much love, everyone. Bye for now. I'll mute out.
Yeah, thank you. Jefferson, I guess you're up.
Hi, just back. Hello, everyone. Hello, Alex. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Well, I think that you have asked about the MagRav for cars.
Well, before I said that, I asked, are the Keshe products allowed to enter Brazil?
Well, in fact, the products that I have purchased, not at all. Only one product we got it through the custom service. We are trying to understand what has happened, but the things come to the customs service and the immigration taxes and
Oh, yeah.
regulations. They return to the. I have sent many documentations, but they said no, it is back.
Oh, return to
So
sender.
yes, return to sender, and we're gonna try again. I will keep a closer look and to see what's going on, but we don't know if it happens only with me. I'm not sure what really happened, but no problem. We know that the fields that we are learning are much more important to those
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
those things. So, but we'd like to, because these things normally we are buying to give it to the other people to give them to fill the fields of these products so we can spread the brand and the technology, the knowledge in the correct way, direct from the source, let's say.
Right. And
And that's
Brazil has a very advanced space program, as I understand it. So hopefully they'll get included in all of this work because they're quite right up there with probably one of the top space nations actually in the planet. So I'm sure they're interested in developing it further. And of course, the cache technology is the next step.
yes, I believe so, Mark. The only thing that they are so concentrated in matter state.
Yep.
That's that the thing. When you go out from the matter state to matter maths and the principal matter transition and whatever, they just don't want to start again or something like that.
They're going to
They just
say, where's the spaceship? What do we get into with the new
yeah.
space program?
I was talking to a friend the other day. He said, "Yeah, but one day I will die. I will find all of this." I said, "Yes, for sure." So, what to say? Just to give the idea of this knowledge means each one have the own direction to follow. One of them may be interested in developing and go ahead, but normally just for matter state. They don't care matter development, but they don't care very much about.
Yeah, they think
as I
it's an
understand.
illusion. I think they just think it's just something you're making up or like not real because they can't touch it. They can't feel it, this
Yeah,
energy
yeah,
dimension yet, but they will. But
yeah, sure.
the reason I was asking you because you said you felt quite good with your car Magrav that you built yourself, as I understand it, and it's perhaps you'd like to share something about this car Magrav.
No, in fact, who has made the car Magrav was another Jefferson, is Jefferson Modesto.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's a friend that it's studied a lot and developed a lot of Magrav products. I haven't done. I just have in my car a small, let's say, a spiral, nano spiral inside my car, and the water in the water for washing the wiper, and that's all. I don't have in my car. I have in my bicycle. I have some Magrav inside my e-bike, so it works fine. It is. The
But
bike
it
is okay.
changed a little bit of your emotion. Is that what you
I
reported?
think it changed the emotion of the people that I pass through.
Your passengers.
Not my passengers. I feel the where the cars pass.
Okay.
They feel good
It's coming
around.
in
They just
contact, the fields.
yes, yes. I think so. Even my bicycle, when I go around, I feel that the people feel good when I pass by with the bike. So that's the reason I use it. We normally use it just to give it the best energy that we can. So we don't care about much about the saving or things like that.
Mhm.
It's just to spread the fields and wishing that it reaches the all that they need,
And of
things
course,
like
you're
that.
one of the reactors. It's not just the coiled wire or the water. You're also part of the reactor.
Yes, we are the main reactor.
Hi,
That is
Jefferson.
just the tools. Yes.
I
Hi.
just to add another thing, I took the air filter and a brand new air filter and dipped it in the plasma water and let the air filter dry before I put it back in.
Mm-hmm.
And just to that kind of helps with the environment inside the cabin.
Oh, it's a good idea. Yes, I just spray sometimes in the car as well when the air conditioning system. I have water in my car, some spraying. In fact, I have a plasma water and the system everywhere that I go. I take. I have a small breathing device that can snorkel it wherever you can go. Those very small. Just put some like filters inside this small smelling, like for flu that you can smell just the air. Just put some drops of water. It works great because we inhaling. It's
Yeah.
faster.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
So
very nice.
you're
It
you're
doesn't
not
cost anything.
yeah, you're not looking to get 80 miles to the gallon or anything like that. You're more into bringing this device as an elevation for the others.
Yes, that's
Very
it. That's
nice.
it. I
Yes.
don't care. I really don't care about saving everything. We keep on looking at it just for
Mm-hmm.
sometimes to give a confirmation in matter state for those who wants to know. So you can have something to show them in the matter state that they also have some kind of results because anyway the plasma it depends on the environment it becomes energy at the matter level so we can interact and reduce a little bit but the intention absolutely is not that
And
just to
there's a whole nother line. Just think about people modifying. I mean, there'll still be many matter state cars. I don't know if everyone will have a hovering car, but can you imagine all the mechanics and things switching people in a way, putting the thing on the battery, a little coil or something else to make the battery, doing all these kind of small adjustments, but making a big difference in the operation and the environment within the car. So I think we'll have, Alex, wouldn't you think we'd have plasma mechanics as well?
Uh, yes, I, that is going to be a field that you can't believe how huge it is.
I think Rick might be heading that up. He's quite big into the understanding of the cars and he's got magic hammers and everything else. He may have a whole assortment of plasma devices or things you can hang from your mirror. I mean, it's just, as I see it, the possibilities are limitless.
Well, just think about when you were a kid. Did you ever enter a soapbox derby?
I didn't, but a friend of mine did.
Does anybody, can you explain to the audience what a soapbox is?
Well, it's a piece of soap and you put some wheels on it and you try to go downhill. It's all gravity fed. No, you actually build a certain little go-kart in a way with some wheels on it and you paint it or try to make it aerodynamic. It's normally a father and son type of project, or maybe an older brother with a younger brother, and the person gets in it and they have it on a hill and they just go down and see who can cross the finish line first. I think that's the way it's normally done, but they may have different heats And then, of course, the final one with the top one from every heat, and then they go at it that way. It's very enjoyable. And many
No
people do
motor.
all kinds of tricks to try to get their car to slip through the wind and to resist the gravity. Yes.
But there's no motor.
No, there's no motor. It's all gravity fed.
So it's actually
A
half
hill.
a plasma car.
Yeah, you might say that. And that's what Mr. Kesh said you're doing with the MagRev. You're creating a limited flying machine. By reducing the weight of the car, it's easier to handle. It's less on the brakes, the less tire wear, and the rest of it. So there's a plus the environment that changes for you and your passengers.
Well,
So
if it travels at 5 centimeters above the ground, there'll be a lot less tire wear.
there'll be no tires, right? They may have those F1 formula things where you know how the car lifts off the ground when they go to work on it. That's all you need, unless it can just lay on the ground. I'm not sure. So again, that a whole world of people that are in that business. Obviously, you've got to keep the existing systems running, but then we'll add little devices into it. People will become again more familiar with some of the plasma technology and how it's used. So it doesn't matter if it's from the medical or the mechanical side or the farming side, the cosmetic side, it's going to touch the pet line. Again, this is going to touch every area of our lives.
Well, the transition has to come not the traditional way. The traditional way has been the fear of loss that overrides the desire for gain. And, unfortunately, it looks like that's going to be the way that we're going to have to come in because there is a tremendous fear of loss now on the planet. And maybe that's going to be the peace dividend.
Okay, anything else, Jefferson, you wanted to add or you forgot to include there for us? We appreciate you sharing.
No, Mark, it's okay. I just appreciate always to be with you all. I have not been so much present physicality, but I always with you all at
Right.
the soul level. I've been doing so many different things that in the matter state that we cannot avoid. Must we are living this in this planet to take part and to work in the matter state as well. So, but
Absolutely. He said, yeah,
in a different way now that we can understand the strength and the power of this knowledge, and we can try to slowly, very small, but we can share people at least think about get rid of the idea only for the religions and the faith and the eternal, let's say, competition between the religion and the science. And we know that the science now can explain the religion, the beliefs, and the beliefs cannot explain anything. That's the thing. So
yeah.
it's a nice journey. It's a very nice journey to take some time, but I think
Oh,
we
yeah.
will
Well,
reach
thank you
that.
for all your contributions. As Mr. Kesh said, this is where science meets the soul of the man.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jefferson.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, are there any other thoughts or questions someone would like to share? Otherwise, we'll bring this meeting. Alex, anything else you want to add? Or
Well,
anyone else?
I just have to stay within my own, you know, my own tiny little perfect world. You know, I'd like to come down and visit Jefferson in Brazil. I'm sure it's much warmer down there than it is here. But other than that, I want to thank everybody for allowing me to continue to present. I'm honored and so grateful to be part of this whole process. I'm personally really looking forward to all the benefits that can come to the North American continent, because we've been suffering far too long, and what the last couple of years has given us a lot of time for introspection. And there's no doubt, you know, when I was younger, I was full of hope, and I watched the quality of life come down in our so-called, you know, first world community, as opposed to the third world community. And now, you know, we are in a critical state, and we're hoping we can make this transition. It's very important for our current status, our children, and the future generations, because one of the reasons that we're so proud to be Canadians and Americans and Mexicans is because this continent has always been a great beam of light shining on the world. And it's dimmed a little bit, shall we say. And so it needs to be restored. And thankfully, we are getting help from other continents, you know, with the knowledge seekers who are coming from all walks of life, and understanding that we're all part of humanity and contributing to humanity together.
And that was one of Mr. Kesh's conclusions in this workshop. Once man learns to put the energy state together with the matter state, it's going to be a beautiful life on this planet. But we've got some ways to go.
Exactly, Mark. So thank you so much.
Lisbeth?
Yes, thank you. I annex little words. The point of most difficult problem for the people growing and elevate the all souls is because the people is fear and not believe in you. You is not believing in all the people not believe in you, not believe in you and your soul, not believe in all around you.
Yeah.
And of course, anybody need practice more detachment. And that you believe, you create. You create that you believe. So, but it's transition time, like Alex told. It's transition time is because it's transition for remember it. The all knowledge is inside us. But it's continue working and continue practice daily. But more practice is you think you good and you do perfect. Like Ito's the creator, like Ito's the Mitra, like Ito the Kesha Foundation.
Right. This is what Mr. Kesh keeps reminding us. The wealth is within you, not belonging to you. And this is where every man makes a mistake.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. But it's time for say thank you so much. Micah, happy birthday. And everybody is happy for listening to you again. And Diane and all people around the world, thank you so much because all souls contribute the peace. Thank you for that. And please continue to elevate the souls permanently. Give freely our souls, give freely your soul, and the other soul got it when they need it. Thank you so much, because we are the soul of the peace. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Alex. Thank you,
And
thank you.
thank you, Elizabeth, for all the work you do in the foreground, but even more work you do in the background. So we thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much.
As Mr. Kesh likes to say, we're all carrying a very small corner of this very large carpet. So however you want to contribute in a way to the Kesh Foundation, feel free to find a point that you'd like to work with. And I think there'll be many, many points coming up in the future. They're going to need all kinds of people with a little bit of knowledge in plasma. And that, of course, will extend and grow. I think Mr. Kesh has a few more surprises for us coming up as we move into this new dimension through the transition period.